greatest of kings. Let one of your knights try to land them below against me. Indulge me in this game.
I will need thee.
One year hence.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Hello, hello, all you gigalos. Welcome to Garbage In, Garbage Out. I'm your host, Kelton, and I'm joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, Grift. How's it going, buddy?
It's good. Still kind of coming down from the mushroom trip that was this film. Just in time to be able to gather my thoughts. So, looking forward to getting into it.
Well, they always talk about the connection between psychedelics and government agencies, and that's why I'm really excited to be joining us this week. It's our buddy and definitely not CIA asset, Mike from Twitter. How's it going, sir?
It's going good. Watching this film really just made me reminisce about dosing people with LSD, which is something I've done many times throughout my career. So yeah, it was a trip.
All those scenes out there in the wilderness reminding you of covert missions in the Afghan mountains. I understand. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I could just keep asking you questions about your personal life, but instead, I guess we might as well just be talking about the movie that we're all here for. So kind of, I guess I could say that we're gathered around the round table, but the cheesiness is not really this movie's mode. This is not the He-Man movie that Guy Ritchie's King Arthur movie was. Instead, this is A24's The Green Knight. So we're following King Arthur's nephew, who goes on a daring quest to confront the Green Knight, who is this just emerald skinned stranger and tester of men. That's at least what the premise is giving a summation of. Really kind of not selling the movie appropriately, at least in my opinion. But what did we think about this film, y'all?
This is definitely not your daddy's Sir Gawain, as it is written here in the docket. It's compared to all of the consumer content, 00 there for the O's, we've been watching for this season. This was just an absolute breath of fresh air.
No, come on, this is just like Space Jam. What are you talking about?
I remember, I think the last time saw a movie in theaters that I was actually looking forward to, that was a hyped piece of media in my mind, was Uncut Gems in late 2019.
Wow.
So it's literally been almost 2.5-3 years since there's been something that you would actually want to go see in the movies to see on the big screen. And that's just the way things are nowadays, I guess.
I'm a big King Arthur head. I'm really a fan of the mythology. I sort of think these stories almost became in an evolutionary sense, perfect stories, as they were iterated through different people, retelling them orally and then copying them down. People would add elements, remove elements, and sort of the way that the stories were most interesting to the listener or the reader was the way that they were recorded. So I've always thought it was crazy when people adapt King Arthur stuff and they just completely abandon it, because they basically just use the names.
Yeah,
they use it for sort of commercial recognition of this IP that doesn't have an owner, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's you should be adapting this faithfully, because these stories actually mean something to people and they're really good.
Exactly.
And so, as subversive and whatever as this movie was, which I'm sure we'll get into, it's shockingly close to the actual poem. Even some of the craziest stuff. It had been a while since I read the poem. I have it here, actually.
Oh,
J.R.R. Tolkien did one of the most famous translations of it, because he was obviously a professor of language and a linguist.
You can say nerd. It's okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was actually really surprised by how true to the poem that this movie was. But at the same time, it really changes sort of the underlying message of it in a super interesting way.
Absolutely. I mean, I thought that as a modern adaptation, deconstruction, whatever kind of tack on word you want to use for talking about this version of this myth, I really was surprised with how faithful it was, because I really was kind of expecting this third act twist reveal. Like, I don't know if I was thinking it was going to be like a post-apocalypse, or if it was going to be like a jump forward in time or something. I guess I was just trying to think about, like, well, what would the Hollywood version be? Like, what is kind of the thing that I don't think I would enjoy, but I guess we'll end up getting. And so to see that not only did this film not do that, but in fact it steered completely away from it in the other direction was a delight for me. And so, as someone who is very ignorant to the actual poem itself, I know the plot beats, but I'm not familiar with the language within it, or specifically the pacing of the story, at least with J.R. Tolkien's adaptation. It is something that I think it will be interesting to see how many people now go back to the poem and want to start reading that, and then it is this weird spark for an entirely different bit of literature and new types of content, if you will, to use modern phrasing on it. Because I think it could inspire a lot of people to look back and go like, oh, there are a lot of really great stories out there that don't involve superheroes.
Yeah, and Mike, you brought up the point about the level of like IP recognition, because like compare this to something like that we did a couple months ago on the show, the Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie that had like the King Arthur name attached to it for very cynical IP reasons, and then the actual story basically was this jumble of many different styles and types of stories, but none of them really had much to do with the King Arthur original myths.
No.
Like, yeah, I remember, like, you know, I was into the King Arthur stories growing up. I remember there was this one particular book that we had in the family bookcase that had these really striking, almost like Gothic art paintings. And it's just like always a reminder that one of the aspects of the King Arthur story is this sort of just battle against the encroaching, ability to live as a civilization. Because it's all like in the historical context, it's all like after, taking place after the fall of Roman control of the like Britain area, and then it becomes about I think it was the Saxons that were invading. So it's about like the encroaching wilderness and darkness, and literally like the Dark Age, and movies that can like capture that sort of like ragged Dark Age aesthetic, like this one did in a way that like I really haven't seen in a while. Like it definitely like struck close to what my original interest in the stories was like growing up, and obviously they were like related to art and stuff, and the way it was portrayed. I definitely remember making that like a big impression on my mind.
Of course,
and this film just brought it right back to it.
And I guess it's probably as good a time as any to say that I'm seeing a lot of praise happening for the director, very well deservingly so. But I also think that like the art director and the production design of this movie deserves a lot of credit for what they were trying to do. Because it's one thing to say, I'm going to have a movie and it's going to have XYZ tone, but to then fully sell it on everything. Like, it didn't feel like I was watching a $15 million movie at any point. To give the more Marvel pilled people in our audience reference point, that is less than one episode of WandaVision. That's how much this movie cost to make. And so to realize like that's the sort of stuff that is possible when people are actually feeling a bit of creativity and a desire to try and weave together a story that is both gorgeous and entrancing and dreadful and poetic and weird just all at once, instead of being this bizarre cookie cutterism that takes place. I'm just very glad I got a chance to watch it in theaters. instead of probably what I would have ended up doing if it was available online, which was, watch it on my TV and then go, oh, okay, that was okay. I mean, it was just a fun experience the entire way through.
I was actually reading an interview with the director. I think his name's David Laurie.
There we go. Okay. All right.
He was talking about the budgetary restraints actually. And he sort of cited it as a reason why they couldn't go period accurate with the costumes. And it's also interesting if you listen to the soundtrack, there's sort of obviously like a lot of keyboards in it and a lot of like sort of like handheld instruments and stuff. So it's one of those things where I feel like the sort of the restrictions that were imposed on them by not having a massive budget actually made it more interesting. And for, all the sort of talk of like, like what a serious movie this is, like he was saying a lot of the influences for it were like sword and sorcery movies from the 80s. Like he mentioned Lady Hawk, and he mentioned like another movie, and like there's a couple shots in the movie like where we sort of get like these like trippy like collages that show like space imagery like nebulas and stuff. It's like you would totally see this in like a sword and sorcery movie from the 80s.
Yes.
But he's sort of like taken that and repurposed it into a whole different aesthetic. Like it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be like some sort of retro throwback. He's like taken those ingredients and just turned them into something different, basically.
Correct. And that's how I think if you're a true creative, that's how you should make art instead of being reference humor. Or stealing like a shot for shot of like an 80s Conan the Barbarian style movie. Instead, you just take certain elements, but then you have modern technology, modern filmmaking conveniences, modern storytelling, and then you go ahead and you actually tell your own version of it and not be apologetic for it, and also not try and wink at the camera. I don't know. I was very impressed.
They never even used the names King Arthur or Guinevere or Morgan Le Fay or any of these sort of archetypal characters. They let you assume that because Gawain is a relatively well-known
excuse me,
it's, King Arthur character.
It's Gawain, apparently.
Gawain.
Yeah.
Reverting back to the original, like how it was pronounced in the stories growing up, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember reading a version of The Green Knight in like an early English literature class in high school, and it was actually funny. Like I went to theaters with an old friend who was in that class.
Wow.
With some people, and like it was just, there was a lot of funny inside jokes about like the Green Knight and like early English lit, just from like this really good class in high school we had where the teacher was like very inexperienced, but it was with a class of like both like smart kids and jokesters who were sort of like intent on turning everything into a bit. So we would do like reads of like I think it was Le Mort d'Arthur. Like we would like take turns like reading that, everyone in character, and some of like the some of the character impressions that people did were some of like the funniest things I remember from that time.
Oh, see, y'all were,
so like these are 10-year bits going on.
It's so much more highbrow than me, because I just remember being in the class and finding out that the Don Juan poem is, in order for it to rhyme correctly, is supposed to be pronounced Jewin, and I was like, well, all right, this is comedy gold right here. Little ninth grade me. Let's make some wildly offensive jokes at this point. But I was really surprised to see this director, by the way, because it's talking about like from the director of A Ghost Story. And the other film, of course, would be like Pete's Dragon. And so I'm really not surprised that A24 is not going like from the director of Pete's Dragon and the upcoming Peter and Wendy Disney movie. But so it's nice to see that he's kind of having this is a wildly inappropriate comparison, but just work with me here, of almost this Donner-esque directing style of saying like, well, I'm going to do 1 or 2 for me, and then I'm going to do 1 or 2 for the studio, collect like 10, 15, 20 million in directing fees, and then I'm going to go continue to do art house shit until I need more money again. And then, great. They'll pick me up. No problem. So
yeah, the A24 branding trust is strong, whereas they know not to put that reference to Pete's Dragon on the Sir Gawain poster or trailer marketing or whatnot.
I mean, it felt so bad like when I was sitting in theaters though, because I was like, wow, like A24, their studio, I really believe in, I guess, like what they're pulling off. And then I watched the fucking trailer for Lamb, and I was like,
oh, yeah.
I think we've jumped the shark a little bit here. Okay.
The A24 is given into the big media psyop that is pushing human-animal hybrids.
What was it called? Sweet Tooth or something on Netflix about like the deer human hybrid baby, and I was just like, what is this? And now it's just a full lamb child. Like, okay, well,
and there was that dating show with people in
Sexy Beasts.
Animal
That's right. Yeah. Christ.
Oh, that got canceled by people. Like someone wrote like a one of those like insane woke threads that was like, the only people here under these costumes are skinny cis people. Like,
yes.
you can never win.
I need more queer coded dragon fucking a goat. Yeah, that's what I need. So
I think that might be one situation where less representation is actually a win.
We spoke to several alliance groups who said, quote, no thanks, and moved on. Well, I guess, we should probably start talking about the actual movie itself, because the talking about our initial thoughts is always fun, but it's in the recapping of events that I feel like we can really both have a good time until the very end, where I'm sure we will be just as polarized as the audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes would imply we all should be, and start yelling and screaming at each other, because that's what film discourse is, right? That's how art is supposed to be, by the way. It's supposed to be like 95% of people like something and aren't challenged by it, right? You know what? Never mind. It's okay. It's fine. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's start at the beginning, where it's a film that has chapter notes, just like Zack Snyder's Justice League, with an old school font. So I was white knuckling in the theater for a second there, wondering what I might have gotten myself into as things were starting. But turns out, again, Sir Gawain is a real cool dude, because while all the other knights are waking up with their families on Christmas morning, he's waking up in a brothel. Yeah, he's a real cool guy. He's a knight who fucks, and we need to know that immediately and get reminded of that all the time. So he then, of course, stumbles out of the brothel, goes and sees his mom, who is Morgan Le Fay, right? Like that was something. No, not Morgan Le Fay?
No.
Okay.
Morgan Le Fay has the blindfold on later.
Oh, okay. Well then,
okay.
I don't know who this imposter is. All these fucking double role casting things. Shout out to it, I guess.
Yeah, so just to amend that, actually, I don't know who she is in the movie. In the poem, the character in the castle where he gets tested later, who wears the blindfold, is Morgan Le Fay.
Yeah.
But, he is supposed to be Arthur's nephew. And in the stories, Arthur does bang his sister, Morgan Le Fay.
Hell yeah.
So I don't know what the relation is supposed to be, but going from the poem, my assumption is that Morgan Le Fay in this movie is the woman with the blindfold in the castle later.
Got it. So then he's talking to not mom, who is talking to him about how, well, I guess he needs to go to mass. So it's real important that her child goes to mass, so that way then she can conduct like some like weird, bizarre ritual thing. She has to go and hang out with all of her pagan friends, which I guess is what you would call just being like an elderly spinster in the Dark Ages.
Getting canceled for a witch at that time, but I thought my sort of like the vibes I got from the beginning was that it was very much Gawain's mother figure who is in control of events.
Yeah,
like she was like conjuring the Green Knight to give this sort of like rigged test game to her fail son, like who was like basically like you're not living up to the imperial myth making that we need to, you know, carry on the regime, I guess. And then so like let's set up this test for him that isn't supposed to cost him his life at the end of the day. It's supposed to just like make him in the eyes of the realm this next figure to inherit. So it like, I don't know, like there's both the allegiance of this like adaptation to the original poem and to the sort of Green Knight stories that make it out into the general like through like the educating channels.
Sure.
Like because like I think Mike, from what you were talking about from the poem itself, like that is different than like there are many different versions of this story that are like fed to people through various outlets. And it was this, like, I definitely found it to be, like, an interpretation that, like, improved on basically all of those, at least in terms of the message. And it just had, like, the fake out in the third act that I think Kelton and I have both been raving about on Twitter was a really interesting way to make it not be a cliche ending compared to the rest of the tone.
Definitely. That's a good solid tease there. As we're stumbling out of the gate to try and kick the story forward. I just really enjoyed like the open discussion of nepotism that's taking place, of where like Gawain clearly probably doesn't deserve to be at the table, but you know, King Arthur is like, oh hey, we haven't really ever like talked, the two of us. And you know, now with that information, Mike, it might be because he's like, who is my incest son? Like what's the story going on here with this? And so I thought it was really cool. Also, King Arthur is played by the bad guy in the last two Mission Impossible movies. So I was expecting maybe there to be a heist to take place at some point. I was very sad when that didn't take place whatsoever. But anyway, King Arthur is trying to get to know Sir Gawain and is like, well, tell me, like, what's one of your feats? What's one of your stories? What have you got to tell? And you know, it's a real poster's dilemma. It's like, you know, when you tell people that maybe you're kind of big on Twitter and then they ask for your Twitter account or for like a funny tweet of yours, and you're like, no, actually, you know what? Never mind. It's fine. It's okay. We don't need to discuss this. No, I don't have any.
That's just when I send them to the Grift shop.
Oh,
and then,
okay. Well, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, get it. Yeah.
Very different processes here.
They can check out the shirts.
It does, the first act, a great job of showing how Gawain is not someone who is what people might think of as a knight from this era. So it's doing a good job of adding this very dirty element of realism to it that then really kind of comes crashing down a bit when you see the witch's ceremony taking place and the ritual that's being performed to summon the letter that then summons the Green Knight, who then comes in all of his glory. And I love the design of the Green Knight. What did y'all think?
It felt very nature-based. And I think that was evidenced in what was probably my favorite line of the script later on when the lady of the castle is talking about like green and like the like all the connotations of like mold and decay and like nature taking over. And yeah, like
I get it, goth kid at Hot Topic who can't afford black clothes. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, actually green is like way more dark if you think about it than black. That's why I'm wearing green right now.
Yeah. Wearing green to signify like climate doomerism. That's the new goth.
I could see that. That is a future that I think will probably. Oh God, I really hope that that subsect of people don't pick up on this movie and have that be the thing they take away. Although, you know, they very well might. It's okay though. Mike, I wanted to ask you a question since, again, you've read the poem, especially very recently here. The challenge that the Green Knight lays out to Sir Gawain, or rather to everyone at the table, is that basically right out of the poem, or was it kind of tweaked and streamlined a bit?
No, that's exactly what it is in the poem. It's sort of supposed to be like a test of a knight's like honor and honesty. Same as it is in the movie. Obviously, you kind of have like this threat of death hanging over your head for a year. And then whether or not you keep your word at the end of it is like sort of the greatest test possible.
Okay.
I just actually went back and looked. I guess for this film, the director decided to combine the character of Morgan Le Fay and Sir Gawain's mother, who in the poem is a different character.
Great.
So
Okay.
so that is Morgan Le Fay, who is his mother.
Let's streamline this. Awesome. Let's make it happen. Now, is this challenge that the Green Knight gives, is this something that's meant to be almost a rhetorical thing of where then like a knight is supposed to like shake the hand of the Green Knight and that is the correct response? Or is it always kind of, you think, like geared and meant for there to be a violent action in order to cause that heroic journey to go forward and follow true to your word?
You know, watching the movie, I couldn't help but think, like, why did Gawain need to go sicko mode and cut his head off? You know what I mean? But I don't think, you know, in modern times, we don't really have the same sort of mindset as people had back when this was written. Like, it was an honor culture. If you challenge someone to combat like that, I think there was more of an expectation of, you know, maximum effort. Whereas today, somebody might be like, you know, maybe I could just cut off his hand and and like risk being maimed at the worst in a year. Like, that's still pretty bad.
And like, look at the reaction he got from the table. Like, they all cheered him.
Yeah.
When he just
when
he went sicko mode, they're into that.
Oh, great job,
You know,
Gawain. It's all you, buddy.
That part was really surreal, actually, and it's one of the interesting parts of the film that it sort of does a deconstruction thing just by accurately depicting what is in the poem, and the watcher is like, wow, that's fucking weird. Like, you just cut off this guy's head who like wasn't fighting him, and everybody's like applauding him. You know what I mean? Like, no further work needed. Like, accurately depict the narrative, and people are already like having culture shock watching it.
I mean, I'm just so fascinated to see about, you know, what would have happened if Gawain instead was like, oh, I'm going to give you a gift, and then in 1 year you'll have to give me a gift. Just, you know, like I don't know, and it's some shitty gift too, like a Yankee candle. Yeah. So then the Green Knight has to re-gift it back to him, but act like it's a new thing. Just something other than that, I think, could have taken place. There was a bit of dialogue I really enjoyed between King Arthur and Sir Gawain, and it's King Arthur asking Gawain, like, do you understand the challenge? And he goes, I do. I think I do. And then King Arthur says, like, remember, it's only a game. And then, as you said, immediately just goes sicko mode, chops off his fucking head. Not really paying attention to the idea of everyone's just trying to have a chill time here on Christmas. And goddamn, dude.
I just remember, like, that would always be a common theme in the King Arthur stories. Like, King Arthur and his knights, they're all having a feast, they're all having a good time, and then like some stranger like comes and disrupts the situation, like offers a challenge, or like is an old like lost like acquaintance who comes with news of a thing they need to deal with, or like someone proposing a quest. Like, it's always the you know, people having, like, you know, celebrating their success and permanence, and then some outside force coming in to disrupt it and provide the impotence for the story.
It also shows like a different sense of pacing, because like these are full stories, and it's not meant to, you know, try and have a hook that makes you want to keep reading to what the next one is. So it isn't like it ends on a cliffhanger after the feast is over, and then a knight bursts in and is like, I need your help, King Arthur. There's a blah, blah, blah attacking blah, blah, blah. And then it ends. Like, tune in next week for the next bard poem or whatever. One thing I wanted to also mention is that I'm so glad we didn't spend that much time in the year in between, because that would have been my other guess too. Is that like in a slow burn movie that maybe it was going to focus entirely on the year in between of that sense of dread and the anxiety that you might feel from that. And instead, like, you kind of clip right along. Like, Sir Gawain is just having sex, he's drinking, he's getting his portrait made, you know, doing all really cool stuff. There's a super fucking creepy kids play with puppets that takes place with needlessly violent graphics for the time. Real cutting edge shit. Just the local James Cameron is developing puppets that heads will pop off with red string coming out of it. So then when the year is up, Gawain, of course, doesn't want to go. And Arthur has to kind of convince him and be like, come on, you said you would. You really said you would. What's the deal here? What's the problem? And, you know, I just got to uphold that sort of thing. You know, it seems like it was a real human kind of reaction to say, no, I don't want to jump forward and go right off into my death. And so he has to kind of get talked into it to not bring dishonor to King Arthur or to anyone around him, as well as the fact that the whole town is now kind of expecting him to go. Like, it's not something that people have forgotten about. And so I hadn't thought about that in terms of outside forces rather than your own personal sense of duty.
It definitely added an element compared to the traditional Green Knight story, where it's the fate of the realm does not rest in Gawain's hands as this sort of prince figure, and it felt like there was much more of a vibe, like the people there, being ruled by this monarchical regime, put this sort of outside faith in this member of the royal family who needed to do this quest to prove themselves that they could, take over the next time. And the sort of, the direction of, the direction of that is being led by Morgan Le Fay, definitely making it that's who's really in control in this version. It's not King Arthur, it's not Guinevere, it's the outside pagan force there.
Yeah, I'm now just imagining Morgan Le Fay as like the worst kind of stage mom, really trying to push her kid out into the forefront. Like, look, Arthur was able to pull a sword out of a stone. My son is going to go kill the Green Knight. Maybe. I don't know. Kind of backfired. Wasn't really anticipating he would be the one who jumped up and said this. So, fuck.
Yeah, he's the fail son. And he just wants to drink and to have sex with women, and just he doesn't feel up to taking the reins as the next generation. And that's I felt like it was definitely trying to tap into those sentiments, at least among a lot of people in this. There's the trope of the fail son on Twitter, and it's like this movie was a lot of the sort of narrative arc of it was sending him through he has no choice in the matter. The only way he could have escaped, and I think as he starts out, and you had mentioned that why doesn't he just ride off and become a grifter?
I'm just saying,
people keep saying you look like a knight. He could totally take advantage of that, even though if he didn't officially have that title yet.
Yeah, I mean, again, it seems like the past. It was like what you're talking about, Mike. Everything was so geared towards this idea of honor, because now with modern sensibilities, if I got in hot enough water somewhere, I could go just 40 miles in another direction. There's a new village. No one is ever going to have any overlap whatsoever. No one's going to know who I am. I can just reinvent myself. I can just be like, oh, me? I'm John the Carpenter. Good old Johnny Carps is what they call me. Yep. Okay. Awesome deal. And it just seems like, again, he got pressured to wind up and go out, leave the castle, and immediately there's a skeleton in a cage at a fork in the road, and the camera lingers on that, and I was just like, good. And then
find the metaphor.
Yeah, right. I'm not sure. Oh, and that's also when I say, like, to people who say, well, this movie is too esoteric and is too out there and it's too weird. I mean, the points get hammered home pretty obviously. Like, it's not some truly obscure thing where, you know, I've seen people draw a comparison to, like, Tree of Life. And no, absolutely not. Like, this movie has a solid 3-act structure and beginning, middle, and end. There's a hero's journey. I mean, it seems almost formulaic to a fault if you want to consider a true art house kind of movie. I just enjoy it for being a great film.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
And I think that the sort of the more existential subtext of this film it's not, it's well done, but it's not like that intellectual that people shouldn't be able to understand it. I don't think it's that different from a movie like Click. Mm-hmm. Not to ruin the end or anything, but
that's true.
Oh God.
Click is a good.
It's a great movie.
I was emotionally affected by Click. I remember seeing it as a teenager. Don't waste your life, kids.
Yeah.
Oh, that cut me to the core, Mike. Oh God. I'm gonna have to move on so we can finally get to the end here, because I have a feeling like that's just going to be a 20-minute discussion in and of itself. But so Sir Gawain, he is traveling around, and that's where he runs into a scavenger who he's kind of rude to, but not really that rude to. And the scavenger points out, like, which way to go to Gawain. Gawain heads that way without tipping him. So, just remember, I guess, to tip the members of the working class. Otherwise, they will track you down. They will hunt you, beat you almost to death, and then rob you. So, guess that magic green girdle belt your mom gave you didn't do shit, huh, Gawain? Fuck you, stupid ass.
Yeah, like, well, wasn't it used as, like, a Chekhov's device later in the thing?
Yeah,
so
okay, yeah, that's our obligatory Chekhov's belt.
Found the plot hole, damn.
As long as you have this belt, no harm will come to you. Smash cut. He's just getting kicked in the face by that fucker from Killing of the Sacred Deer. Just over and over again. I guess he wasn't really that hurt, huh? Oh, well. So yeah, he gets robbed. They leave him for dead, and this was where the movie was teetering for me in balance, because I was like, I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm kind of wondering if it's going to be too up its own ass. When you just hear the clockwork sound of the 360 shot begin of Gawain laying on the ground, and then it circles back, and then it's a skeleton. Also laying on the ground, then it rewinds, and then he's back and alive again. I was just like, okay, I get the symbolism here, movie. Like, I understand. It's good. Not at all heavy-handed. It's crushing me. Like, we can just keep moving, and so thankfully we do, because he's able to wiggle his way to escape, which is. I enjoyed seeing, instead of just kind of showing the quick, he uses his hands to slide up on the sword, and then that's what enables the ropes to get cut. He actually cuts the fuck out of his hands after kind of writhing around for a little bit in a very undignified way. It's those little touches that help ground the movie so well, at least in my mind, which then makes the scenes that follow have a much larger impact, in my opinion. Because then when he comes across an abandoned cottage and he decides to kind of Goldilocks his way into one of the beds that's inside, and then he gets woken up by Saint Winifred, who I know you probably don't recognize her, Grift, but that's Carly Morgenthau from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So the main anarchist villain person who is part of the Flag Smashers. She appears in this movie, and it felt weird to be like, what are you doing in a real movie? I thought like Disney kept all their actors like in a lab somewhere and only let y'all out periodically. But
yeah, very glad we didn't do that whole actual TV show.
No,
for
my
show.
fucking God, yeah. I can't wait for us to review something that has like an 8-minute ending speech of like, can't we all do better, both politicians and us, ? Yeah, no, but get all the way out of my fucking face with that. But yeah, so Winifred's whole deal is that she's missing her head and she's appearing as like a full-bodied ghost, and Gawain is hesitant to get her head from the bottom of the lake, and he asks, what do I get in exchange? And she gives probably my favorite response of like, why would you ask me that? Why would you ever ask me that? It's just like, yeah, I guess, because again, it's the honor code. It's the society point. Like, why would this knight, this nobleman on a quest to fulfill like his honorable duty, be like, but what's in it for me though? If I give you back your head, ghost lady, just it's weird. Was that?
I liked her. I liked her line too to the question. He was like, are you like real or a spirit? It wasn't she like, what's the difference? Like,
yes.
It's like,
yes.
like the same thing, which was, that was another great, they gave her some very choice moments in the script there.
It's almost like she's a real actor or something, and not, I don't know, this faceless wannabe action hero type that got pigeonholed way too early on, thanks to Falcon and the Winter Soldier and then Star Wars, what is it, The Rise of Skywalker, The Fall of Skywalker, whatever the last one was. Anyway, it's fine. We don't need to talk about those movies. So he dives in, of course. He then finds her skull, but when he comes back up to the surface, she's gone. So he sleeps in the bed one more time, and he finds that the axe has returned to him. The Jolly Green Giant's axe. That's right. That's what I'm going to call him from now on. Not going to be crossover IPs whatsoever. That fucking Peapod company can sue me for all I care. So his quest continues, and we get into Grift. You called this the part where we go full mushroom trip. Do you want to talk about what ends up happening?
Well, he literally eats mushrooms. He throws up pretty much immediately. But
hell yeah!
I thought that was a pretty clear indication. Like, okay, he's going on a bit of a personal journey here through these through these drugs.
Yeah,
and
haven't we all been there? Yeah,
yeah, and it just goes so quickly to like now there's giant people. Like the skyscraper tall people, like
fucking stone giants walking around doing goddamn whale songs to each other, acting like it's the totally normal thing that takes place.
What look like they look like women with no hair, basically.
Yeah. Or maybe they could be giant femboys. Okay, come on.
You never know. You never know.
That's probably some Twitter guy's dream. Right? Taking place.
Oh, God.
I just want to get stepped on by the giant 300-foot tall woman, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Femboy Vor. That's what
that is. Oh, fuck.
Help us with this Dolphin Garage. You're our only hope.
So he eventually, either the drugs wear off or he finally is able to find a bit of safety. I'm choosing to believe that the rock monsters were real, because why wouldn't I? I want to have that level of fantasy take place. But he comes into a house with a friendly guy who's living there. Of course, just no one really needs to worry about what this guy's up to or how sketchy he might be. But he says that the Green Chapel, where the Sir Gawain is going, is only one day away, so he can totally hang out with him and his smoking hot wife that looks exactly like his brothel lover from Camelot. So, quick question here, since it's the three of us. If he does anything with his lady's doppelganger, is it cheating? All right. Like, what attracted you to her? Everything about you. Okay. How am I the bad guy here in this situation? It seems like I don't know. It's a weird situation. Grift, you had written down in the notes here that it definitely had the couple looking for a third energy. the
Yeah,
entire
like-
time.
It was like the two of them in a portrait on their medieval Tinder profile, just like picking up this young handsome knight on the road and playing psychosexual mind games with him.
Oh my God! Yeah, for anyone wondering, the Lord is played by Joel Edgerton, who has been in a lot of great things. But basically, anytime he has a hot wife in a movie, like shit is about to go down. Like it happened in The Devil All the Time. It happened in Serenity. I think it happened in It Comes at Night. If you want to define hot wife in a very much more grand sense, there stretching.
He's a hot wife guy.
Yeah. Which, I guess respect to his lifestyle. Obviously, he's found something that works for him. Here, my question again, Mike, not to use you as kind of like the source of all knowledge about the poem here, but I assume the Lord is just as weird in the poem.
Yeah. Okay. So this is interesting. Just to sort of map out how the movie has tracked with the poem so far, the intro sequence at Camelot is very similar to the poem. Basically, at that point, the poem does a time jump. It briefly alludes to adventures, including Gawain stopping at Winifred's well, but it does not elaborate. So,
okay.
Sort of the giant, the whole Winifred episode, that is not in the poem. The poem basically cuts to the castle where we are now.
Weird.
And,
okay.
So strange. But there was a couple things at the castle. I was like, okay, there's no way that was in the poem. And I went back and, it's actually pretty much the same. So in the poem, the Lord of the Castle says to Gawain, I'm going to go hunting and I will give you the best of whatever I find, but you have to give me whatever you receive at the castle. And similar to the film, Gawain is like, what am I going to receive at the castle that isn't already yours? And the Lord just kind of shrugs What happens next in the poem is every time that the Lord goes to hunt, his wife tries to seduce Gawain. And so on the first day, she kisses Gawain and he's like, get off me, like trying not to do it, but he feels guilty about it and he doesn't want to let the Lord know that he kissed his wife, but he also doesn't want to like renege on his agreement. So he kisses the Lord in greeting when he comes in the house. So that technically he does not. So that kissing thing is actually in the poem.
Oh, nice.
And scholars have argued about whether it is meant to be like a sort of depiction of like homosexuality, since this whole castle scenario is a temptation scenario, right?
Yeah.
So, and of course, that was considered to be like pretty grave sin by the people who would have been telling this story, as would be, fucking someone else's wife.
I hadn't even thought about that, because the idea of like, so he kissed him. Like that it's kind of like a comical beat to me now. But I am trying to like put myself in the brain of someone from the Dark Ages, where it's like two men kissing each other. Oh my God, this is the most intense horror story I've ever witnessed. I can't believe this would take place. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's argument over the context there, because, men did kiss each other in greeting and it wasn't necessarily a sexual thing.
Yeah.
They're
like
European.
Yeah.
Just dudes being guys hanging out as bros, it's fine.
The whole like looking for a third thing. Yeah, I was definitely thinking about that. Like, in this film, you can sort of imagine the Lord like going up to his wife and being like, yeah, jerk him off. Like, he's like hoping Gawain is gonna give him like a reach around in the forest afterwards or something.
Gawain, I need that nut on screen.
I guess we should also talk about that, because the wife, who I think is a witch, right? Because she has like a separate green belt or something. It's different than the one that his mom / Morgan Le Fay made for him. but it looks exactly the same. And it has like the same promises of like you won't be hurt as long as you have it. But then like she's doing like weird like passionate talking to him, and then he just immediately blasts just all over the place. And in my note I was like, oh, she's the green lady, and that's Seed. Aha, I got it. It's all coming together here. Good times. I was not prepared just for the viscousness to being displayed on screen. So it was nice to see real practical effects taking place. None of the CGI cum that you might see in Hollywood blockbusters.
Yeah, bring back the cum squibs.
Fuck. That honestly would probably be like the best day of shooting, just in general on set. Probably like, okay, all right, Dev, you lay out in the bed. Alicia, you're right there with him. Okay, props department. I need like, I don't know, the most watered down super glue that you have.
You guys are both still fully clothed, but we need to set off the cum squib.
Dude, I honestly almost felt like the cum was in there to get an R rating, because the movie would have been like rated G or PG without it.
It really would have. That's the other thing too, is that like there were a couple shots that, and again, I hate to be the guy who's all of a sudden talking about like gratuitous nudity or gratuitous adult content, but like it really felt like it was there so that would then it could market itself as an R-rated film. And so, like, this will never be the kind of movie that will be on at like Thursday at 4 p.m. on TNT or whatever. But like with those two scenes cut out, it absolutely could be. Like, there's nothing holding it back from being that. So, yeah, weird. I guess it makes sense then why he would be good as a director for Pete's Dragon, and then also Peter and Wendy. Like to think about that, like, well, I mean, some mature content aside, like you're not actually doing anything that kids can't be exposed to. It's not like a schlock director, for example, deciding to.
Yeah, I bet part of the reason why the audience score was so low is that people went in expecting like battles and night duels.
That is on
you're
them.
not going to get any of that.
Yeah,
like,
this is an A24 film.
Of course it's on them, but like it definitely that subversion of the expectation versus what the audience would be like the more general audience who may not even be aware of the A24 brand. Probably most of them aren't. Like as far as like following movie
and
studio
I mean this
brands.
in the best possible way. Jungle Cruise came out this weekend as well. Go watch that instead. Like that, I'm sure will be a much better time if that's the kind of spectacleism that you want. Like, it's fine to say that you want a roller coaster instead of a trip to the art museum. Like, it's okay. Like it's fine to say that, but don't get mad that the art museum doesn't have a roller coaster inside. It's just a different vibe.
And the ratio of roller coasters to art museums is getting worse and worse by the year.
Yeah. Big roller coaster has been really just fucking decimating the art museums, but it's okay.
It's a zero-sum game there.
So Gawain is able to escape, of course, after him and the Lord have like a not entirely not passionate make-out kiss, just a single kiss, but you could tell the Lord was really feeling it a lot more than Gawain was, and so it was fine. He also gave him back his magic fox, which we don't really know was magic until the fox starts talking, and it was nice to see that, because I was wondering what exactly the fox was going to have to do with the story beyond being like a color palette differentiator, because it's much more orange. So as you're going in different zones, it does provide a nice element of contrast in that way. But like that's a lot of CGI budget to be spending on a fox who doesn't really do that much. And then, once the fox starts talking, it's like, all right, okay, good job, Gawain. Listen to the talking animal in the forest, because I don't know. The Fox had I think a pretty good line in it, because as Gawain's talking about how he wants to go out and he wants to go meet his fate. And the Fox says that if men knew what they faced, they would not hesitate to wear their shame, which I just thought was like a good line. Like it's a good, it's something to say like, oh, well, if I was there, I could have kicked his ass, or I could have done this, that, or the other. But like, when you're in that moment, there's no other place you would rather be. And so, to just embrace that.
I think it's worth flagging something else that the Fox says, because it's relevant to the end of the story. When the Fox is trying to dissuade him from going to see the Green Knight, he says he has no mercy or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like, you do not know what you're in for, which is very interesting to think about in light of what the Green Knight does or does not do.
Yes.
Which we'll get to here.
I mean, I'm certainly again, but we'll jump right into it, I guess.
And that was a pretty obvious CGI Fox, though, to close that out. Like it was relatively well rendered and didn't stick out too much, but like it was zipping around and was a little less detailed than the really well use of depth to like a lot of the visual shots. Like
exactly,
it was the one element that stuck out.
No one is thinking like
obvious, like yeah.
Yeah, no one's going like, "Whoa, that was a CGI Fox? I had no idea." So, but that again, that's okay. So Gawain is finally able to reach the chapel via rowboat, and then he waits the whole night in front of the Green Knight that he finds sitting inside, because the chapel is less of a chapel and more of like an old church that's been eaten away by the forest itself, and so it's green by proxy because of the moss and the leaves and the vegetation surrounding it. So that then when the knight wakes up and decides to resume the game, you really do feel like the knight is in his element. And so Gawain, of course, is trying to ready himself and to try and not, he doesn't want to get his head chopped off, but he's trying to accept it. But each time the knight tries to swing, he flinches and he scurries away. And the first time I was like, well, okay, human emotion, nerves. The second time, that it's a line of dialogue that's going to stick with me, I think, for a while here, of where Gawain asks, like, is this really all there is? And the knight says, what else would there be? Like, it just it resonated with me, of like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the end. Like, you're able to kind of stare into the ledge, looking into the void, personified a bit. And in what really felt bizarre to me, especially at first, when the knight tries to swing the third time, that's when Gawain takes off. And Grift, would you mind describing the sequence of what happens following this?
In what's not originally revealed to be a time jump, it plays out the scenario on screen of what would have happened if he'd taken the horse and run from the Green Knight's third attempt to chop his head off. And he gets back. King Arthur and Guinevere die of old age. He rejects basically a marriage proposal from the woman, the lower class woman in the brothel, who ends up having his bastard kid, and they're ripping it out of her, and she's crawling on. That was a bit of some disturbing imagery there.
Absolutely.
She was all bloody, and then just crawling towards the door and being you're taking my baby. And and basically the whole downfall of the kingdom. His son dies on the battlefield. The battlements of Camelot are being broken down like it's Helm's Deep. The final moments of they're in the closest members of the royal family are in the final chamber inside the castle, and the rest of it has fallen, and there's everything's burning. And he sees that this is the path that would result of him running away from the challenge. So then he makes that choice to go back and bare his neck to receive the blow. But then we get definitely a sort of like, it reminded me a lot of Inception, just to go the very low hanging fruit comparison, where
Hell yeah.
you're given this semi ambiguous ending, but through a lot of the context clues.
Well, because the ambiguous ending, Grift, real quick, sorry, don't mean to cut you off.
Oh yeah,
is
no
that you realize that it's a flashback. He decides to pull the magic girdle away from him, so he's embracing whatever happens, and then the Green Knight then says to him, like, now off with your head, and then cut immediately to the end of the movie. Credits start rolling, and I love that ending. I loved the sequence. I loved how it ended. I would have hated, at least in my opinion, another 15 minutes of wrap up and then, well, it goes a different way, or, oh, he actually did get his head chopped off, and then we get a slow pan of his head, being separated from his body, or whatever it is. I love that ambiguousness, because that wasn't the point of the movie. Like, his arc had been completed, and the fact that it doesn't show what happens afterwards is highlighting the fact that it doesn't matter what happens afterwards. And I mean, I'm honestly surprised that so many people have an issue with how it ends. But I want to hear y'all's thoughts on it.
I have a real Reddit theory about this, about what happened in this movie, actually.
Okay.
So we sort of see that this character from the beginning is like a big failure in a lot of ways. The director said that he was sort of based on his own life, which he referred to as like a failure to launch. Like, this is sort of like a World of Warcraft in his parents' basement at 30 years old kind of character. And so the first thing that he runs into on his journey is this group of characters who robs him and ties him up. So in that scene that was mentioned earlier, the camera pans around the forest and shows that a great deal of time has passed and that Gawain's dead body is laying on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty realistic and consistent with the character that we've seen so far. I mean, this guy wouldn't be able to fight his way out of a wet paper bag. Like, that's it.
Literally, the only guy he killed was because he was kneeling down, pointing at his neck, showing like the preferred incision point. Yeah.
Yeah, we never even see him fight once in the movie.
So from this point on, there's a big tonal change in the movie. Everything gets a lot more fantastical. The next thing that he does is he talks to a ghost, and he asks the ghost, "Are you alive? Are you a spirit?" The ghost says, "What's the difference?" And I think that Gawain is basically dead from the point where he is robbed and tied up in the forest.
Whoa.
And we sort of see this like increasingly fantastical journey. And when he gets to the end of it, he can't let the physical realm go. Like, he can't really pass on. And the Green Knight shows him what his life would have been like. And he basically sees that, like, life is meaningless. He's kind of a piece of shit. He's not like an honorable guy at all, which is, why the fox tells him don't go there, because the Green Knight is going to show you that life is meaningless, and he's going to show you that, like, who you really are, basically.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay.
And
keep going.
And so
sorry. My mind's getting blown right now. I love this.
Yeah. Off with your head. They're getting blown off.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, and he's able to pass on to the afterlife or whatever at the end, because he can sort of let the mortal plane go.
Whoa.
And this is a big departure from the end of the poem, because the end of the poem, the Green Knight says, just kidding, you were honorable, I'm not going to cut your head off. And the Green Knight is revealed to be the lord of the castle that he was just at.
Of course.
That's the identity of the knight in the poem. And so he reveals that the whole thing was a test, that he knew about his wife trying to seduce him. And he's basically like, yeah, you pretty much passed the test. Like, you're an honorable knight. he like nicks his neck a little bit, you know, because he hid the green girdle from him or whatever. But aside from that, like, he technically passed all the tests. And then Gawain goes back with a story to tell. So even though this is a very faithful adaptation of the poem, turning the Green Knight into some sort of like guardian of death or like a force of nature or something like that, and basically having the message be life is meaningless and you're probably a piece of shit instead of like live with honor. It's like about as subversive as it can possibly be, despite being a very close adaptation otherwise.
See, I didn't interpret it like that at all, but now that I can see it like that, a whole new level of appreciation for this movie. God damn, I love this movie. Holy shit!
One thing that stuck out to me with regards to the ending was the last words his mother say to him are like this is your opportunity, like, don't waste it. And like, it was never about like, oh, I hope you come back alive from this dangerous quest. It's like, it felt like the whole thing was very scripted for him, and he didn't have much say in the matter. He was just like going down that track as this powerful, young man who needs to prove himself. And I think that, like, I mean, in terms of nihilism, that interpretation makes this, like, my initial reaction to seeing this movie, I think I remember posting like about how this, like, the whole tone, and no matter what interpretation of the ending you take, it's like the sort of like doom and like the inevitability of death of anybody who follows down the system that civilization has led for them. And that's like that's the if that's the path your soul takes, then the ending is always it always does result in doom and waste.
Man, again, it's a different interpretation, but it dovetails so nicely into it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that a movie can work so well with two such wildly different vantage points is, I think, a credit to it. I mean, it's something about where it legitimately is, at least in my mind, art, of where people can have in-depth analyses take place and come to different conclusions, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong, because it's not just a plot by plot by plot by plot. It's not like, well, actually, this is an Easter egg to this movie, and that is a plot reference to that movie. And it's just is operating on an entirely different level than so much of, like, just, again, the spandex content minds that it seems like everyone is trying to operate from normally these days. I love it.
In this sort of reminds me of Kubrick films in a way. Like Eyes Wide Shut sort of has like this very suggestive, there's a lot of suggestion in it, but there is no right or wrong answer about what happened. It's like, is this a dream? Is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this, Green Knight is a similar movie. There is no answer, there is no right way to interpret the plot, but there is some pretty weird suggestive stuff. Like the other thing about the episode where he's robbed and then finds Saint Winifred is she asks him a pretty weird question, which is she describes the way that she died. She says, there was a prince here. He tried to lay with me. I struggled and he cut off my head, or he came back that night and cut off my head. And then she says, was that you?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's so many weird things happening here, because obviously, we just had a scene that sort of showed a long period of time passing after someone else stole Gawain's axe.
Yes.
And he finds the axe in Winifred's house. So, I mean, that suggestion to me, is that maybe the guy who stole the axe used it to cut her head off, and that all happened a long time ago, because now Winifred is like a skeleton,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's some weird, and I don't think there's an answer there, but one way or another, but it's very suggestive. It's obviously intentionally suggestive.
Yeah, that's the purpose of the visuals there, for sure. Like, there's no coincidence that there's a skeleton in the bed there. There's that evidence of a time jump. They show Gawain's skeleton in the woods. It's just, like, it hits you over and over again with the hypothetical time jump device, but it then circles back to that being the actual reality that is being contrasted against the sort of unreliable film narrator, it's like an unreliable narrator, but for the main what's being shown.
Unreliable director. I mean, it hurts my mind a little bit to see that an audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which I understand is Rotten Tomatoes, but to see it be like in the 50s or the high 40s, whatever it's fallen down to it at this point, of it almost seems like, oh, okay, it doesn't mean that this is a bad movie. At least in my head, it means like there's something wrong with like 43% of people who go in watching movies and what their expectations are. And I don't know. Again, I'm just so impressed with this movie, and so I guess I need to start doing my own deep dives into all the various theories and then extrapolations that can get made. It'll be a fun thing to chew on for a long while. I look forward to it.
No matter what interpretation of the ending, the way the Green Knight story, there's the original poem, and then there's the versions that people read and have imprint on them. The traditional ending is basically like, he passes the test, he goes back, he now has a story to tell, he is welcomed into the fold. The sort of stakes are never at the level of like the realm and its the long-term consequences of the quest, but it's a nice story for Gawain to get his own moment to shine. And like this, the what the director and team have done with the movie here to take that baseline sort of uncomplicated fairy tale and make it a piece of art that has these multiple overlapping interpretations. Like it's truly something to behold.
Yeah. Again, I love it so much. I love it. I mean, I know I have already got on the record as saying, in my opinion, this is like the first truly great film of 2021, at least in terms of my viewing experience. And so, yeah, when it comes to like, well, how many trash cans are you going to give this movie? It's like it's 0. And fuck you for asking. Would be my response.
Yeah, I think this is my first 0 trash can one too. So let's set the precedent and put the first member of the 0 trash can pantheon out by the driveway.
It's all recycling. No, it's all downhill from here. Truly, the message of the Green Knight as well. It's a nice thing to consider. But Mike, did you have any qualms with it? Did you see any areas for improvement or anything that you didn't like in it?
Not that I feel like it's, beyond criticism or anything. I just feel like there's a lot there. Mm-hmm. And I need to watch it quite a few more times to be like, to even really understand all the sort of subtext and the points that it's trying to make. And then at that point, I think I'd be able to evaluate how successful it is in doing what it's intending to do. But
sure,
a first watch of it, I was like, when the credits rolled, I didn't even really know what to think. I think my first thought was, God, I know people are going to be fucking annoying about this movie.
Yeah.
And my appreciation for it really, I think, when I went home and I sort of like reviewed my copy and I read through the Wikipedia synopsis again to refresh my memory, and I sort of saw how true it was to the original poem and exactly what the departures were in terms of, thematically. And I was like, wow, if this was, somebody making a copy of the Sir Gawain poem back in the day and they had added this stuff about, Winifred or whatever, it would stay in the poem because it fucking rocks.
Absolutely.
Like, it's, you watch this movie and you're like, all these things that were added are worthy additions to the myth. And I think when you're dealing with myths, it's like, adding stuff and putting your stamp on it is part of it, and this movie does that in a perfect way, I think.
Man, it's so cool to see, especially your perspective on it, by the way, Mike, of because it's not just like, is this a good movie, but it has good ideas that, again, like you were talking about, would be incorporated into the new canon, so to speak, of the film as things were going along. And it just really makes me wonder about, in a much larger sense, in a world without IP, what other really cool twists and ideas and developments are just lurking around the corner, but are kind of hamstrung by just again, how this intellectual property works, courtesy of the Mouse House and others. So, I mean, it's great. It's great. And thank you so much, by the way, for coming on, giving just such a level of analysis and then also commentary throughout, blowing my mind with that the theory that you were talking about. Now I'm going to seem like a really cool guy when I shamelessly say that it was something I was thinking about the other day.
Gawain was dead the whole time.
Yeah, it's
I actually just watched Sixth Sense like a week ago, so that may have been why I picked up on that right away. I was like, huh.
Well, it works. It also is one of those things of where if someone were to be like, imagine King Arthur meets The Sixth Sense meets Click. Yeah, it's a good movie. 10 out of 10. Love it to death. Groundbreaking cinema. But man, oh man. So now as we're getting wrapping things up and getting into plugs here, where can people find you online? Do you want people to find you online? What have you got going on in your world?
People want to follow me on Twitter. It's at Olive Sagan, as in like all of the Greek food Sagan, like Carl Sagan. And I'm sure you can spectate all kind of weird shit that happens on the internet.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. It was really fun to talk about this movie, and like you guys could not have picked a better movie. I haven't watched like one movie this year until this one, and this one was on my list because I love King Arthur. So
perfect.
Dude, this was awesome. Like compared to all the other podcast episodes that are going to come out about the Green Knight, probably most of the guests haven't read and actually like know the original poem. So
yeah,
thank you for your efforts here.
That's right. We're bringing that grounded realness. It's something that we didn't do last week with Fear Street. Imagine if I was like, now Grift, we have to read all of these R.L. Stein child horror books if we want to fully understand this premise. No, thank you.
Yeah, I would have strongly reconsidered the commitment that I'd gotten myself into here if that were the case.
But what about you, buddy? What's happening in the shop this week?
Current pop-up, it's with a cryptocurrency. Last time I was in New York City, I met a couple guys at a party, and we've been plotting a little merch collab since then. So that's the current one. And in next week, we're dropping the second Fed Post pop-up shop. So
all right,
we got some really spicy designs for that one. So be looking out.
It's always a fun time to see just what levels of pump and dump schemes are going to be taking place. So shout out. It's all worked out incredibly well. Please don't pull a John McAfee on us, both in the sense of departing this earth or, running a weird cult island full of, what was it, like brain alpha or whatever his drug of choice was. God, good times. I would say for the podcast itself, go ahead and follow us, of course, on Twitter and Letterboxd at Gigo Podcast. We kind of are just going through and reviewing some back catalog movies, some things that come out as well. Just it's an interesting time in theaters right now to see like what makes a number one movie, what makes a successful movie. And so it was a blast to, again, be covering what I feel like is a real piece of film that's going to be lasting through for years and years, instead of something that's just entirely disposable. It was a lovely palate cleanser. So I encourage everyone, go out there, touch grass. find the green chapel yourselves. Embrace the green void and talk about how I guess Ann Prims have it right, eco-fascists have it right. Anyone with green basically has it right. And until next week, goodbye.
Peace.